Okay, good morning. We are on Hilchos Milah, Reish Samech Hey. Okay, we're moving on to the more ceremonial portion, the brachos, the tefillah. Okay. Seder brachos are Milah b'din Milah b'yom tainus. Aleph, Hamal, the one who does the Milah, right? The Moel, the one who's doing the cutting. Mevarech, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al ha-Milah. So he says the bracha al ha-Milah. V'havia ben, and the father gets to say the bracha of mevarech bein chatichat ha'orla lepriya asher kiddushanu lemitzvotav v'tzivanu. Right, so he says this bracha sounds like it's for a mitzvah, right? Asher kiddushanu lemitzvotav v'tzivanu. He says this bracha. When does he say it? So the Shulchan Aruch says between the Milah and the Priya. Very difficult to do it exactly right in between because it all happens so fast. Right? You can. We learned you could do a Milah the Vasachas, or Milah and or Priya, or you can do it in two steps. We discussed which is better, which is none. Anyways, it's very difficult to do it right in between, but that's what he writes is the minhag, that after you do the Milah, you do the first cutting, then before the second cutting or ripping, or as it's happening, really, it's all very quick. It's pretty much as the Priya is going on, while the Moel is busy with the Priya. Then the father starts saying the next bracha, lahachniso bivrito shel Avraham Avinu. And that's when he should say the bracha. Now, usually the Moel is like already finished with the Priya and saying, no, say the bracha already. So it's often going to be right afterwards. But the ideal time, according to the way the Shulchan Aruch puts it, and that's the minhag of the Ashkenazim, that they say first, right? They bring in the baby, they put the whatever they psukim they say, and they put the baby on the kisei shel Eliyahu. And then they're going to do, so that everything, the Mitzvah gets everything set up, and he's about to cut. He says the bracha, and then quickly cuts. And so then right after the cutting, right before the Priya, or during the Priya, then the father says the bracha lahachniso. The minhag by the Sfardim is they say the bracha lahachniso before the Milah, before the Moel starts. They bring in the baby, and then they say the father right away says the bracha lachniso b'viso shel Avraham Avinu, and then right everyone says, I think they say it then kinikanes whatever is said, right, kishem sheichnasto breathed and v'kulei, and then it says that kisei. Now meanwhile the father is quiet because we don't want there to be a hefsek from the bracha lahachniso to the Milah. So everyone else is doing all the talking, but the father should be quiet. He says lahachniso, and this is all happening pretty quickly. Right? There's no major hefsek. It's all part of the process. So then the Moel says the bracha al hamila, and then he cuts and finishes the priya, and then they continue. So it's a machloket rishonim. What is the best way to do it? Basically, the bracha lahachniso. Number one, it's a question. Is it a bracha of a mitzvah, or is it a bracha of shavach? That's what the Beis Yosef explains. I mean, others too, before and after. The bracha lachniso, it might not be a bracha of a mitzvah, it might be a bracha of shavach. A bracha of shavach, we actually normally say afterwards. That's one of the reasons why it's better to do it afterwards. If it's a regular bracha, so then there's a halachic principle in all brachos of a mitzvah. You always want to do it over la'asiyatan. That's the expression in Chazal. We have it in a few places that you always want to do it over la'asiyatan. You want to do the bracha before the mitzvah, except when it's impossible. But normally you want to do it before. So that's the reason why it's better to just say lahachniso if you hold it's a bracha of a mitzvah. It's one of the two brachos for a mitzvah of alam for the Milah. So then, really, you should do it before the Milah, before the first cutting, like what the Sfardim do. If you hold it's really just a bracha of shavach, so then we normally do it afterwards. It could be done maybe right before also. I know that's a machlokas what to do. For example, the bracha for Yoreh ha'esh, Motzei Shabbos, for example. There's lots of examples. Usually we see the beautiful nature, and then we say Oisa Ma'aseh Breshit. But when it comes to Havdalah, for some reason, it's interesting. Some do before, and some wait, and they do it afterwards. So it's a question, but it's not a shir kedushan ben mitzvotav v'tzivanu. That's for sure. But anyway, I don't want to get too distracted.
Sfardim is against Maran.
Yeah, many times or numerous times. Yeah. So that's the custom. So that's the difference here. Now, the Shah quotes another reason in the poskim why you should delay. I don't exactly understand, but they understood. Why do you say the hachniso later on? Because the father is dependent on the mohel. Maybe it happens sometimes. And the mohel might come to do the bris milah and say, wait, I'm changing my mind. We're not doing it now. Either he's not available. He didn't sterilize the instruments. I don't know if I've never seen that, but maybe he doesn't look so healthy. You take out the baby. He was healthy yesterday, and today he doesn't look so good. So then the milah might not happen. So you want to wait until the milah is actually done, because that must have happened that the father thought they're going to do the milah, and then it didn't happen. It reminds me of when I saw Bris. We're about to get to it. There's a custom to say the bracha of besamim by a bris, by Sfardim. They say besamim. We're about to see it when they after Be'epi Hagefen. So I once saw that, not that it matters, it was an Ashkenazi rabbi, and he gets up to say, they give him the bracha. So he says Be'epi Hagefen. Then he says, Hooray, I don't know if he was going to say besamim or what's it called? I'd say mine, whatever. Usually we're going to see it's hadasim. So he says the bracha, and then there's no besamim. Nobody brought them. So they had to wait a couple minutes. So always look, anyway, also, yeah, you should hold it before you say the bracha. So it was a little bit of a fashla, and or a big one, whatever. And then it was anyways. So the rabbi had to wait for a couple minutes for them to find besamim. And so that's just why you should always make sure it's ready. So that's a question. Should he make another bracha? I think he was a bit embarrassed to make the bracha twice out loud. But also he had in mind for the basamim that they bring him. So if you have the wrong kavana, like on one item, and it doesn't smell, and then you bring something else, you need to make another bracha. Here he had in mind whatever they bring him. And so it took a couple minutes, but he was, probably did right not to say another bracha. Let's say sometimes there's an Indian that sometimes we say there are no brachos, or there aren't brachos on Bein Adam Lamakom in general, because it's often tightly on the other person. So all that is tied into the reason why we say lahachniso, or those say lahachniso afterwards. I'll just point out, ayin, again, we can spend the whole day on this, but ayin, I'll give you a couple quick sources if you want to do a little work. One of the primary sources in the Gemara is in Psachim Taf Zayin Amud Beis, starts in Aleph, and there it talks about, should you say, one of the concepts we mentioned is over le'asiyatan, we had there, and then another principle is, do you say lamed le for a bracha or al for a bracha? Do you say lamu et haben, or do you say al hamila? Do you say al hashchita, al hatavila, or do you say leishe basukah? It's all really the primary example in the Gemara that's discussed is al bir chametz or levaer the chametz, and there the Gemara says vehilchata al biur chametz, right? That's what we all say. So for chametz, the Gemara gave a psak, but it's not clear how it translates for all other brachos. So I'll just give you a couple sources if you want to enjoy yourself. There's the Rambam in the end of Hilchos Brachos, the very end of Hilchos of Ahava, Hilchos Brachos at the end. There's Milah, but at the end of Hilchos Brachos, I think it's a few halachos around Yud Aleph, around there. The Rosh is over there, Tosfos is over there. The Ri says, I don't really have a good reasoning on the Tosfos over there. Why sometimes it's le and sometimes it's al. I'm saying, like, you look up, let's say we have 20, just giving 20 berachos and mitzvahs that we're all familiar with throughout the year, whenever it comes up, whatever the number is. Just made that up. And how does it always make sense? So there's two general rules that are brought down. Again, different Rishonim might have a little bit of a different take, and then there's always the exceptions to the rule. So I'll just say in real short, because this is going to come up again in a moment with Al Hamila. There's two different opinions on what bracha to make. Okay, so just to summarize, two of the main opinions. One is, if you're going to be doing it yourself before you start the mitzvah, again, if you do it before you start the mitzvah and you're doing it yourself, then one of the opinions is then that's when you do le. So we're going to see how that applies to Milah, if it's the father doing it or a mohel doing it. But generally a mitzvah that you're going to put on yourself and you say the bracha before you do it, you do a lamed le, like L'haniach tefillin, right before you put it on, you're going to put it on yourself, and you do it right before. Leishev basukah, really right before you walk in, you should say the bracha, or as you're walking in, you say the bracha, and then you're going to go in and do whatever the example is. But when do you do al? Is when it's a mitzvah that is sometimes done either by others, it's either normally done or often done by other people, or it's the mitzvah is already done already, and now you're saying the bracha after the fact. So again, normally we say it has to be done before, but there's sometimes it has to be done afterwards, or it's allowed to be done afterwards, like al hatvila, when a goy goes to the mikvah to convert, he's not Jewish. We're going to get there actually soon. So there you have to say he's not Jewish yet, so he has to say the bracha after he becomes Jewish, and he already did the mitzvah. So for sure for him, it's going to be al natilas yadayim. So that we learned also. So it might be a piggyback. That's a machlokas. So some say to do before, and some say to do it afterwards. The ones who say to do it afterwards is because it's once that's a Tosfos. It says once you do ala tevila by a goy, so then we have the lady also do ala tevila, and then we throw in natilas yadayim. It's all in the same family. Or because at least they say drying your hands is part of the cleaning process, so at least you get some kiyum of over la'asiyatan. Once you dry your hands, that's another machlokas if it's too late. Okay, so that's one basic mahalach. And the other basic mahalach in the Rishonim, what we just said was more or less the Rambam, more or less the Riva. And the next one is going to be Rabbeinu Tam. Basically, anytime it's a long-term mitzvah that you're going to be doing for a few hours or all day, then you use lamed. Leisha basukah, you should sit there all day long. L'haniach tefillin, you should wear tefillin all day long. Al hitatef b'tzitzit, all day long. So anytime it's a mitzvah like that, then you do lamed, and anything you do it now, and it's done, and so then you do al. Lahadlik nerot, you want it to last a long time, as long as possible, but al hamila, you do a quick cutting, and it's over. Anyways, but that's the general, again, you're going to have exceptions, and you're going to have kashas, but that's the general mahalach of the two different opinions. There's a double mitzvah, the example. Let's say by tefillin, they say there's two mitzvahs, l'haniach and al. So I think it's Rabbeinu Tam over there in the Rosh, he says, well, they didn't want to make two mitzvahs too similar. Two brachas for the same mitzvah, too similar. So they did one le and one al. Let's finish reading and continue inside. The Shach points out, kishahanusi moholim atzman. Let's say a person is an anus, he wasn't able to have a bris milah. Or what's more common nowadays, he's a Baal Tshuva, and he didn't have a bris milah. So now he's an adult. So he has a bris milah. Bris milah on an adult. It happens all the time. What bracha? Well, does someone say, lahachniso? Oh, so we mentioned this. Or we started to mention this. So let me take a quick step back. We said, who says lahachniso? The father, right? So we're about to see two different minhagim. It seems to be, the Rambam says clearly, and again, it's a machloket among the Sfardim Rishonim as well, what to do. But the minhag is clearly only the father, the Rambam writes, only the father should say, La'achniso b'viso shel Avraham Avinu, and no one else. If the father's not there, he's not there, he passed away, whatever the case is, if the father doesn't say the bracha, no one says the bracha. It's a bracha that was metaken by Chazal only for the bracha. And this bracha for the father. And part of the kavanah of the bracha for the father is not just, you brought him into the world one night and now you did your milah one morning and you're done. No. The bracha is also, you have to raise him. You have to feed him. Now you got to marry him off. You got to teach him Talmud Torah. You have to be a father. So the bracha lahachniso is not just for the milah, it's for the future. And it's special for the father. So therefore, only the father should say the bracha. Others,
if they think it's Mal, they don't say the bracha.
Not lachniso. The moel would say al hamila, and Basin will not say the bracha. The Rambam says beferish, it's a mistake for those who do, and they should not. You're going to see. I don't want to get too far ahead. The Ramah is about to say that the minhag by Ashkenazim, and is that the Ramah says whoever is the sandak. If there's no father, then the sandak says it. In other words, other Rishonim hold lachniso is really for anybody. Sure, it's the first person who gets the right to say the bracha is the father. But if the father is not able to, then whoever else comes next in line could say the bracha. Pischei Tshuva says the grandfather is next in line. But otherwise, it could be the sandak.
Mama?
No, the mother is not. We're gonna get there. Let's not get too far. I mean, again, they say if bitzat snias, she's not the one to be a sandak. If she would be a sandak, then she would. According to the Ashkenazim, as far as I know. Okay, this is based on the sandak or the grandfather. Pischei Tshuva points out if you're having one person doing Milah and one person doing Priya, then anyone can say the bracha, but really it's probably going to be the Moel is going to say the bracha, the one who does the first cutting. But either way, they both have to have each other in mind. One of them says the bracha, and they each have each other in mind. The Gra, interesting, Birchas HaShachar is another Birchas HaShavach. So again, that's some whole. So anyways, that could be done before or after. So therefore, I'll just point out in Yalkut Yosef, if he writes the minhag by the Sfardim is in Yerushalayim, the Sandak says it, but in the rest of the world, but the minhag is not to say lachniso unless it's the father himself, like the Shulchan. So the exception to the rules, Yalkut Yosef says the minhag of Yerushalayim is like the Ashkenazim, like the Ramah, that even the Sandak says lachniso. How did I get to all this? Because the Shah has a case where a person wasn't able to do a bris milah or a bal tshuva, and now he's older. Who should say the bracha? So the source of this is from the Rashbash, one of the latter Rishonim, and he writes Kishanusim. Who says the bracha? They say the bracha himself. So the nimo, but and I read it inside the tshuva, and it certainly sounds like it's on him to do it. The Shevi Levi points out, let's say you have a 10-year-old child, right? So who should say the bracha? So we say really, it was on the father's obligation. Then it kind of moves to Beis Din. But then when the child is 13, then it moves on to the child. So Shevi Levi points out, if it's a child who's 10 years old, it should be Beis Din, not the child. But and then from the Marsham, it seems pretty clear to me that once the child now is 13, or once is an adult, and the obligation is on him. I mean, I read it inside. And so therefore, so then he himself should say the bracha. And that's what Rabbi Kramer showed us. That the Nemo, the one who's the adult getting circumcised, says the bracha. If it's less than 13, then the sandak should do it. Right? A baby can't say the bracha himself. I mean, first we also learned it's really for the father. Well, I guess it depends who you hold by, but it's really meant for the father first. And the baby can't speak. Then when you get older, if there's no father around, so then Beis Din does it according to, it seems to be the Rashbash and the Shevet Levi. Once you're bar mitzvah, and then you're able to do it. So it depends how you learn. I just explained to you how I understand the Rashbash, and the Shah quotes him halacha. He doesn't make any distinctions. He says the Nimo says the bracha, and so that's the way Rabbi Kramer did it because that's the way he understood it. The Shevet Levi says he believes it makes more sense that the sandik, even by an adult, should do it. Should say the bracha l'hachniso. Doesn't exactly explain well. He just says it's not a stira to the Shah who quotes the Rashbash because he's learning that the moel is that the adult is doing it himself, which I don't understand that. That's another kasha. But the way it's written, he's saying he's doing it himself. I think it means he brought himself to the table. He hired a moel to do it for him. Can't imagine someone doing it on himself. Except for Avraham Avinu, but I still can't imagine it. So he says it's better to have the sandak. I'm just sharing with you Shevet Levi and Otzer Habrit. He points out that there's different customs, different opinions. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is quoted as saying it's not that you have to, it's better to have the sandik, because you have to have clean hands. And you might not have clean hands, or you might not be yishavadas. He might not be clear enough. And so it depends. Again, we saw a video of he was 100% with it, but the one who got circumcised, even though he was an adult. But yeah, it depends if you're half asleep or if you're too nervous. I guess it depends. But anyways, so you just either way, whoever says the bracha, if you're an adult, you have to have clean hands, and regardless who says the bracha, the Milah area has to be covered up because that's erva. So, or looking away. If he himself is saying the bracha, it needs to be covered. Somebody else could just look away. So a little minor distinction. Let's do the Ramah. You could do it by yourself. You don't need a minion. We're going to get to it, but you don't need to have a minion. Okay, Haga. You have to have a hafsek too if you yourself are saying it. It could be a little bit of pressure, whatever, something. Whatever. A hafsek, fine. Like everybody else. Haga. Right, so I guess Rosh Zalman was just saying practically, to make it simple for all moalim in all situations, it might be better to have the mohel say lahachniso, or the sandik, whoever's holding the head. Again, that's also a question, but Lamaisa we say who's ever holding the head, because if it's an adult, he's not going to be on your lap, so then you just hold the head. Whoever holds the head, that's called the sandik. Let's read the Haggah. At least we'll finish this. Haggah, v'im eina Avia ben Eitzel Hamila. If the father is not there, Yesh Misha Omer Shadam Acher Mevarek Brachazu. So some say, right, not the Rambam, some say someone else should say the bracha. The Harei HaBeisin Mitzuvin Lamulo, because the Beisin has the next obligation, V'noagim Shemi Shetofes Hanar Mevarek Brachazu. Whoever's holding the Na'ar, right, whoever's holding it on his lap or his head, so then that's the one who says this bracha l'hachniso if the father is not there or not able to, or or if the father is not able to, he doesn't know how to say brachos. But some point out, it's better, I think we might read it, it's also good if others read the bracha with the father. If the father doesn't know how to say brachos, like with the child, you say the bracha with him, and it's not a bracha levatala. If he's mute, then he can't say the bracha. So then the sandik will say the bracha. Okay? By the Machaber, it seems like he passes like the Rambam, and it's only for the father, unless you live in Yerushalayim. That's the minhag. It depends wherever you live. Always depends what the minhag is. Ha'av, especially when it comes to brachos, but often with halacha as well. Sfardim do not 100% follow the Shulchan. Ha'av v'hamoel k'shem mevarchim tzrichim lamod. Now, this is another quick topic: standing up for the mitzvah. We'll just finish this part of the Haggah. Maybe I'll let you guys decide. So I'll just first say there's a minhag to stand when you see them walk in during the Bris Milah, both of them. Aval hatofes hanar k'shemavarech nadu sheyoshev. But the sandak who's holding the baby on his lap, he doesn't stand up. And that wouldn't be very good. Umevarech, and then they say the bracha, fine, while everyone is standing. Yesh omrim shekola ha'am shehem etzel hamila ya'amdu shene'amar. But some say not only the father and the mohel say the bracha because they're doing the mitzvah. Whenever you do the mitzvah and say the bracha for a mitzvah, we stand. That's another call we know in other places. But here now is the Ramaz adding, and some have the minhag that you should all, and that is the minhag in Klal Yisrael in all circles, that you also stand. Maybe because there wasn't enough chairs, but anyways, no. The Daf, I'm making a joke. There is a real minhag that everyone should stand up for the Bris Milah. We're going to give a couple quick reasons. Let me just finish reading. The Ramah gives one reason, Shene Emar. He uses a pasuk from Melachim Beis. Again, this is brought down from the Rishonim, that he's borrowing it's not exactly Melitza, but he's borrowing a pasuk. There, I think it's Yoshiyahu, and there's a brit where they stand up in recognition to show that, yes, we're reaffirming the bris of the Torah, that we're going to keep the Torah, we're going to believe in the Kodesh Baruch Hu and be shomer and mitzvos. That's what that pasuk is talking about, that story in Malachim. And in order to show that they affirm and they believe and they're going to keep the mitzvahs, v'ya'amod kol ha'am bivrit. And so the pasuk says that they all stood up, right? Kol ha'am v'ya'amod. So v'chein nohagim levad hatofei sanar shehu yoshev. So therefore, everyone should stand up at the Bris Milah. Besides the sandak, a couple of reasons that are given why for standing is, so we just read one, it's an affirmation that we believe in the Bris Milah. So that's why you stand up. Others, anytime you do a mitzvah, anytime you see people doing and walking to do a mitzvah, you should stand for them. We know that by Bikurim, Mishnah, and the end of Bikurim. We know that those who bring the Bikurim, people used to stand up when they saw them walking. We see this by a wedding, a chassan and kala, when they're walking down to do the mitzvah of getting married, they stand. Some do it because of a chas. It's a drash of chassan and kala. Again, there's no halacha that you must stand, but you should stand. Because anyone who's doing a mitzvah, you see them, you should stand for them. Or some say because the Shekhinah's in the room, because you're doing a bris milah, or some say in honor of Eliyahu Hanavi who walks in.